Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to share this documentary analysis with you because we're looking at a historical account that is just truly mind-bending. We're setting the stage for a profound historical mystery, drawn directly from the source accounts, where modern empirical science completely collides head-on with ancient faith and traditional craftsmanship. We're talking about an artifact that sat completely untouched, in the dark, for over half a millennium, only to absolutely stun the researchers who finally brought it out into the light.
Okay, let's dive right into this with a very simple, practical question. If you locked a forged steel blade in a dusty basement for 530 years, what exactly would be left when you finally forced the door open? I mean, basic chemistry and literally everything we know about materials science tells us the answer, right? Rust, decay, and total disintegration. You'd expect a fragile, oxidized relic barely holding its shape. I want you to keep that stark scientific baseline firmly in your mind as we travel back to the year 1988, because that exact expectation is about to be completely shattered.
All right, Section 1, the 1988 Hagia Sophia Restoration.
So, back in 1988, the legendary Hagia Sophia in Istanbul was undergoing this massive, highly coordinated restoration project. The Turkish government brought in an international team of highly skeptical experts. We're talking leading archaeologists and historians from Italy, France, Germany, and Turkey. Their job was strictly professional. They were dealing in mortar and stone, completely unaware, well, actually entirely clueless, that they were about to bridge a vast 530-year gap in history. You see, in 1453, a sword was deliberately placed in the Hagia Sophia. It just sat there, hidden and undisturbed, while entire empires rose and fell, surviving world wars and centuries of sweeping change, until that global team literally stumbled upon its vault in 1988. And today, that very artifact is displayed securely in Istanbul's Topkapi Museum.
Let's walk through the exact sequence of events as it unfolded for these researchers. Picture this. While working near the main mihrab, the team discovers a small, previously hidden vault right beneath the centuries-old carpets. Inside this dusty, forgotten space, they find a magnificent mahogany chest inlaid with silver. The German lead expert, Dr. Hans Weber, cautiously takes responsibility for opening it, treating the artifact like a super fragile cold case. Inside the chest, they find a velvet sheath, embroidered with gold thread carrying the Islamic declaration of faith. With shaking hands, they slowly remove the sheath, fully expecting to find a rusty piece of crumbling antiquity. Instead, they reveal a perfectly gleaming blade.
Which brings us to Section 2, the 1453 Conquest and Legacy.
To truly understand why this gleaming blade left these brilliant scientists completely speechless, we have to briefly flash back to its origins and really grasp the monumental significance of what they were holding. This sword belonged to Sultan Mehmed II, known to history as the Conqueror. In 1453, at just 21 years old, which is incredible to think about, he achieved the impossible, breaching the seemingly impenetrable walls of Constantinople and ending the Byzantine Empire. But the historical accounts note something totally fascinating. When he finally entered the magnificent Hagia Sophia, he didn't do it with the swagger or arrogance of a young conqueror. He ordered the carpets rolled back, uttering the quote you see here, "This dust is better than me. I have not to step on it." He entered with profound, absolute humility.
Right then and there, he unsheathed his sword, the very weapon that had forged a new empire, and placed it by the mihrab. He declared it an amanat. An amanat is a sacred trust. He decreed it would remain there as long as Allah willed. The Sultan wasn't just casually leaving a weapon behind in a building. He was purposefully planting a spiritual and cultural anchor for the entire Ottoman Empire.
Moving right along to Section 3, a baffling metallurgical mystery.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it frames the moment we go right back to that dusty room in 1988. The international research team is staring at the Conqueror's sword in dead silence. Why? Because what they are looking at completely defies modern material science. According to the fundamental laws of chemistry these experts studied their entire lives, an untreated steel blade left in an unsealed basement for 5 centuries should be severely rusted, with its fabrics totally degraded. But the reality of this 15th century artifact was the exact opposite. There was zero rust, not a single speck. The jewels embedded in the hilt were pristine, and the edge was incredibly razor-sharp, literally as if it had been forged and polished just yesterday.
You can almost hear the bewilderment in the room through the recorded reaction of Dr. Hans Weber. He famously exclaimed, "This is scientifically impossible. How can a steel sword survive 500 years without rusting?"
And keep in mind, this wasn't a layman being easily impressed. This was a seasoned, highly rational German archaeologist in a state of sheer shock. The blade's immaculate condition completely shattered the team's modern scientific understanding.
As the shock washed over them, the Italian expert Marco Rossi leaned in closer and noticed an intricate engraving right there on the hilt of the pristine weapon. It was an Arabic inscription from the Quran, Inna fatahana laka fatan mubina, which translates to, "Indeed, we have given you a clear conquest." This discovery immediately added a profound layer of spiritual mystery to the already baffling physical condition of the steel.
This perfectly sets up Section 4, Science Meets Spiritual Devotion.
Naturally, as scientists, their very first instinct was to test it, desperately hoping to find a rational explanation. But post-discovery scientific analysis offered absolutely zero comfort. Carbon dating confirmed it was indeed a genuine 15th century artifact. They verified the steel composition was standard for the era, and most importantly, they found absolutely no trace of hidden chemical anti-rust agents on the blade or the sheath. The science entirely failed to explain its pristine condition. They were left totally grasping for rational logic.
This internal conflict is incredibly well documented in the personal diary of Pierre Laurent, the team's French expert. Laurent was an atheist, a man who believed strictly in hard, material evidence. Yet, he wrote this stunning admission. "I've studied science my whole life. What I saw challenged all my theories. No scientist can explain this." Even this highly skeptical, non-believing researcher was forced to humbly admit defeat in the face of this artifact.
But Laurent's diary actually goes further, and it is truly captivating. He continues, writing, "When I stood near it, I felt that peace, that awe. I understood it is not just metal." The aura of the sword completely transcended material science. It wasn't just a puzzle to be solved anymore. It actually touched a hardened skeptic on a deeply human, almost spiritual level.
Now contrast that scientific bewilderment with the emotional reaction of the Turkish historian on the team, Professor Ahmet Yilmaz. According to the accounts, upon seeing the pristine blade, the professor fell to his knees and wept. He kissed the embroidered sheath. For him, there was absolutely no scientific mystery to solve. He instantly recognized this as the miraculously preserved sword of the youth who had fulfilled a revered prophecy, a hadith, about the conquest of the city. He viewed the artifact's impossible preservation purely as divine protection of a sacred legacy.
Let's move to our final section, Section 5, the artifact's cultural legacy.
Before the sword was ever packed away, we saw what this legacy truly represented in that tiny room. The authorities actually permitted Professor Yilmaz to pray right there in the vault. The source accounts paint this incredibly powerful cinematic image of the moment. The European scientists, Weber, Rossi, Laurent, standing in completely stunned, respectful silence, watching as Professor Yilmaz offered a prayer on the exact physical spot where Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror had stood 530 years prior. It was this singular, beautiful moment where history, devout faith, and modern science perfectly merged.
So, the crucial point is this number right here, 530. For 530 years, this blade just waited in the dark. It survived the centuries without a single spot of rust, bridging ancient 15th century craftsmanship with the modern day. Today, you don't have to go down into a dusty vault to see it. It rests securely in Istanbul's Topkapi Museum, where millions of visitors look upon the very same gleaming steel that so completely baffled the world's top experts back in 1988. Which leaves us with a deeply provocative question to end our explainer today. Looking at the impeccable preservation of the conqueror's sword, we really have to ask, do some historical artifacts simply transcend the rigid boundaries of material science? Do they become something more? Eternal symbols of faith, willpower, and history that completely defy our modern understanding? I'm going to leave you to ponder that fine line between science and legacy. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through the source material. And as always, keep questioning the world around you.